Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Hi, Pete.
Ethan, how are you?
I'm great. How are you today?
All good, thank you.
Okay, we are wrapping up season 1 of Halo. Is that right?
Hopefully. We're 2 episodes away.
We're 2 episodes away? There's 2 more.
So there's 2 more. We're talking about episodes 6 and 7 today. Then episodes 8 and 9 come out over the next 2 weeks. And then we can, we can kind of wash our hands from the show.
Whoa.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're racing towards the end.
Yes. Only because I'm one of those guys, it's tough for me to watch a show and then stop halfway through unless it's absolutely miserable. And this is kind of getting there, but having said that, it's Master Chief, so, I have a little bit of an emotional tie to him.
So, do you want to give a recap of episodes 6 and 7, and then let's go into, how we feel that this is progressing?
Yeah, absolutely. So episode 6, we deal with the aftermath of episode 5, which ended with that battle sequence where they lost the relic to the Covenant. And here we see that Kai, who was badly injured, we didn't know whether she was alive or dead. She's very much alive, but is getting
injured.
Healed,
very
badly injured. So, but she's being taken care of by the hospital. And you also see that now it's kind of like everyone's going into damage control mode, whether that's, looking after the army, whether that's looking after the installation. And then politically, you see that the UNSC is looking for kind of like a political scapegoat that they can use to kind of distance themselves from what would otherwise be seen as like a colossal failure on the program's part. Mm-hmm. And so effectively what happens is that during like an interrogation of Master Chief, of Dr. Halsey, Master Chief comes in, he kicks everybody out, and it's just Master Chief and Halsey, but of course you have the other, let's say the, leaders of the military watching over that interview as well. And she admits,
Admiral, and you've got Captain Jacobs. Both of them are somehow
as well as Miranda.
Teleported. And Miranda joins them as well.
Yes. So I think they joined through some kind of like hologram or holographic kind of they use like a Matrix style interface where they're watching it virtually and they're not physically in the room. And in any case, Master Chief is able to coerce the truth out of Halsey, and she admits how the Spartan program started. Which is to say, and this is straight from the lore of the video games as well, Halsey orchestrated the kidnapping of hundreds, if not thousands, of children, and replaced those children with clones of those children, and those clones had a defect in them so that they would eventually die. Exactly. So the parents of those children didn't know what was wrong, but then, there's hundreds of parents or sets of parents who have basically kids who die, or clones of their children who die.
You couldn't even give them healthy clones. I was more shocked. Shocked that she gave them defective clones. Like, why not just give them someone healthy?
I never understood that. And I'm sure there's a lore reason for it that I must have missed even in the video games, but I never understood that. Yeah. But in any case, so, everyone feigns shock, although obviously the people in command knew about this, but like everyone feigns shock. Miranda finds out about it for the first time. Everyone sees Halsey as kind of like a new light as being this quote unquote bad guy who basically her shtick is that the mission comes first and I'll commit any number of atrocities that I have to as long as the humans survive. Right? Which I kind of get that motivation. It's similar to what we've seen in other movies and TV shows.
Yeah. It's definitely a perspective, right? It's an acknowledgeable perspective. Whether or not your moral position overcomes that or not is a different issue, but it's definitely a perspective.
So she's able to do that, and then of course the council leverages this information against her and basically kicks Halsey out, and they transfer her off of the Spartan program. And hilariously enough, they put her daughter Miranda into the Spartan program as running it, which
so also, much nepotism.
Okay, we'll talk about that as well. And then I forgot. So remember also at the end of episode 5, McKee, the sleeper agent, was captured. She's now being like kept in a holding cell, like comfortable prison. She's being, she's getting her blood tested. She's being checked out. They want to make sure that she's safe or not safe, etc. Chief connects with her. He finds out that he and she are both special in some way, and she's asking to see the artifact so that she can find the location of Halo, what we know to be Halo. And he says no and decides to go touch it himself. He touches the artifact, and the episode ends with, then they're both connected. So even though he's the one touching it, McKee is also getting hurt by that. Her heart rate is going up, her blood pressure is going up. And then all of a sudden, at like the crescendo of all of this, everything all of a sudden goes quiet and calm, and the episode ends with McKee and him on a Halo installation.
I have to say, I don't know how you felt about this episode, but I actually found this one to be pretty good. And I liked one of the things that McKee said to Master Chief, which was, it kept hurting me as well. And she was recognizing that he was dying. And she said, look, you've got to embrace it. Like, just let it take over. And then all the pain will go away. And then again, when you saw him kind of like gripping the artifact, you saw his, I think they even said like, he's having organ failure or circulatory system failure or something failure, right?
Yeah.
And eventually he just kind of like got to the point where he couldn't do it anymore. And either he like passed that point of no return, and suddenly he just kind of like gave into its power. And that's when you showed him, right? And McKee, like face to face in a very calm Halo environment. Yeah. And for me, I thought that was really kind of like the groundbreaking, hump that he needed to overcome. And I thought that was pretty cool the way that they did that scene.
Yeah. So that's how episode 6 ends.
That's 6.
And we don't really get a conclusion to that ending. It's kind of like a cliffhanger ending, because immediately after, episode 7 rocks up. And episode 7 has nothing to do with UNSC. We don't even see a ship.
Nope.
It's 100% Madrigal.
Yes, it is.
We go to subplot C of the Halo series, and we come back. Quan, at the end of her arc 2 episodes ago, or 1 episode ago, she had kind of escaped from Soren, because Soren had kind of put her in handcuffs because she was being like this really belligerent jerk.
Yeah.
She kind of overcomes that, and he leaves her and goes back to his home. And so she's on her own. She drives out until like her car fails, and she drives out to the middle of nowhere. She's captured / meets up with like a group of these rebels / insurgents. She wants to get more answers from them because apparently she knew her father had met with them. They don't want to help her, but she kind of bullies her way into it, as she does, as is her personality so far. For 7 episodes, we've only seen her as this like angry, spoiled child.
Yeah.
And then finally she drinks some special liquid, goes through this ceremony. She finally learns to calm her rage through all of this. Like, she even sees Master Chief in her hallucinations. She sees her father in the hallucination. And through this metaphysical, experience, she learns that her family was guarding a portal to someplace else, and that was their purpose.
We don't know anything about it.
We don't know anything about the portal, and as we predicted a couple episodes ago, I told you that there was going to be some kind of link to Halo or something like that her parents were in charge of, and that here it is. They dropped the curtains. So she has to go back to, she's been told to go back to where it started. So we go back to that campsite from the very first episode of Halo. And Soren comes back because, he feels like he has to fulfill his promise to John and protect her. So he comes back, and while they're at this original landing site, or at this original town site,
back. Yep.
Vinsher, whatever his name is, comes back. They find out she's there. She's the last remaining rebel who's against them. Brings his army. They have this protracted battle. It's basically just Quan and Soren versus Vishnu's people. They fight. They do some guerrilla style warfare, and she uses Master Chief's gun to blow up a gas canister or like a gas tower of some kind of silo, and blows up the entire army, including Vishnu. It looks like Vishnu is dead. I think that's more or less exactly. She pays off Soren as she promised. She gives him like a lunchbox filled with what looks like Bitcoin, and that ends the episode. He flies off back home, and the episode ends there.
And you don't. So I thought that these two episodes on a standalone basis were pretty good. I wish they would have edited them differently to kind of make them half and half. It seemed like it was a little bit two different shows in these two different episodes, but it was really two different storylines. I would have preferred if they would have kind of gone half and half and cut back and forth, but that's personal preference. How did you feel about these two?
So, in terms of exposition, I think both did a relatively decent job with exposition. I don't think that, I think you really are correct. I don't think either of them deserved their own full episode. I think with some fancy editing, with some plot trimming, and some care, they could have edited this down into one episode where both of these kind of work together in one episode.
Yeah.
Because the Madrigal subplot, in essence, was two major things, right? You learn that Quan's family is somehow supposed to be the protector of this portal, and then you have the fight sequence with Vishnu.
Fincher.
Yeah, the guy, the subplot D of how Soren is losing his power position on his home planet to this other pirate, I thought was unnecessary. I don't think he needed that. I don't think he needed to showcase his force against that one other pirate.
Yeah.
Right? Who was trying to not usurp him, but kind of take on a position of opposition. I don't think you needed that. I think that really didn't add anything to it. And then in episode 6, I don't know. I just thought that was a little long. John finds out about the Spartan program. He only tells Kai. He doesn't tell the others. It was a little CW gossipy / high school drama ish.
Do you find, Pete, that with a lot of action dramas, that every episode so much is changing? There's so many plans that are changing on the fly because there's a new obstacle or something new unforeseen happened, right? There's always okay, we got a plan going forward, and then something comes to spoil it, and the characters have to shift and quickly overcome that new thing. And I feel like I like the Halo story, and I like Master Chief, and I'm kind of liking Halsey as a foil or a heel, but I feel like these episodes are just so slow to unfold.
Yeah.
That there's almost not enough action or not enough happening, and they have to almost make this into Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul style, where they go so slow into these mundane details as if to just kind of fill up the episode. And I think that they can just go faster and have more challenges and more events. There's a lot actually going on here if you break it down. We talk about it, right? We've got Kai, who's kind of going rogue, right? Vanek, who's still straight-laced. We've got Miranda Keyes, right, who's trying to flex her muscle and, get more involved. Admiral, who's trying to obviously, maintain her position. Captain, right, has a daughter, Miranda, also trying to kind of, maintain his position. Halsey's got her issues. Adun's got his issues. You turn to Madrigal, we've got a lot going on. McKee is there. Like, there's so many storylines here, but I feel like they're just so slow to unfold. This should be like sped up a little bit, and things should be a little bit more dynamic and happening faster. And I think that would make it a little bit more compelling.
I totally agree. I think that, if this series is 9 episodes, my gut tells me they could have done this in 5 or maybe 6 max.
Yeah.
Episode 6 and 7 could have just been rolled into one. Yeah. I really think that. And if that means that instead of an hour, the episode's an hour and 15, that's okay. I mean, that's the whole point of these streaming services, is that we're no longer tied down to the 44-minute, hour-long program that you would otherwise see on network TV, or the 22-minute, half-hour sitcom or whatever that you're tied down to.
But it's also like something happens and it's almost as if like it's not an experienced writer. So for example, McKee surrenders herself. They kind of put her in a holding cell where she's not captive, but she's not free, right?
Yeah.
They didn't do anything with her in that cell. She didn't try to escape. She didn't try to manipulate anyone. She didn't try to be friends with anyone. We didn't learn any backstory. Like, she just kind of sat. They took her blood pressure, gave her something to eat. Like, you could have created 4 or 5 different dramas in there that would have made her a more dynamic character and made that situation much more compelling, right?
It's super, super nebulous with McKee at the moment, right? Because in some episodes, we see her as an agent of the Covenant.
Yeah.
And in other episodes, we see her as like a sleeper agent who's now kind of back with the humans, but under disguise. In this episode, even though we know that she is a sleeper agent, right? Mm-hmm. Do we though? Because she's used so sparingly and used so nebulously and maybe so neutrally in this episode. You're right. She could have done something to, maybe she had like a secret radio device or telecommunications device.
The one thing we saw though, Pete, remember when she was getting a little bit frustrated with the nurse saying, I've got to see the artifact. I've got to see. The little blue laser came out of her finger. Yeah. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
That was like, but there's not enough of those teasers. I just think in this episode, in these 2 episodes, like they could have added a whole lot of stuff on all sides to kind of not just speed it up, but just to add more intrigue, add more events, add more obstacles, And I feel sometimes that this show is just happy to kind of let things unfold at their own pace, naturally, la-di-da.
I actually think the other way around. I think it's not at their own pace. I think sometimes I get the feeling that they're deliberately padding it out because they're we need 9 episodes.
It's a mystery, yeah.
We need 9 episodes, so how do we do that? Ooh, let's do some, as you said, Breaking Bad style shots. Yeah. And that works for Breaking Bad because every scene that an actor is in is compelling. In this, that is not the case. Yeah. I am not compelled when everyone's on the screen, when anyone is on the screen.
Well, you make the point, which is Breaking Bad is a show about characters.
Yeah.
It's about the choices they face and the reasons that they do the actions that they do, right? It's not a show about action. It's a show about the people and why they do things. Whereas this, Halo is supposed to be an action series. It should be driven by action. It should be driven by events, obstacles, things. And it's not being driven by that. We've seen so much of the Kwan Ha, backstory, which you've mentioned. It's been so slow to unfold. And yet, from probably the first episode, we knew this is a very important character. We don't know why, we don't know how, we don't know when, we don't know any of those journalistic terms, but somehow she's going to feature prominently in this story, you know? And instead, they've just kind of like taken us for this long ride to kind of get there. And a long ride can be fulfilling, right? Except that in this case, I feel like it's not fulfilling because we know where we're going to go. We're going back to Madrigal. There's something in her past, something with her father. Let's get there already, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It shouldn't have taken 7 episodes for us to figure out something that you and I intrinsically already knew was going to happen. Yeah. We didn't know what exactly, but we knew we were coming back here to solve this.
Yeah. Do you feel that there's no... I mean, it's not like this whole show is like a big bear hug, but there's right now not a lot of good versus evil. You know, there's no good versus bad here. There's a lot of like stuff going on, right? Vinsher is maybe, as kind of like the warlord of Madrigal, maybe kind of the only guy who's, you know, doing something bad, but there's not a lot of conflict, you know? And I'm not sure. I think we need more conflict. We need more pressure or stress or like something that gives a sense of urgency here.
Yeah, and I think what's going to happen is you're going to end up in a situation where all of a sudden the writers and the directors are going to say, holy crap, we only have 2 episodes left. We have to kick everything into hyperspeed. And, you know, all of a sudden any exposition is going to go either out the window or be super glossed over very fast so that we can get to the gunplay and the firefights and so forth. Yeah. And I don't know, it just seems like the whole balance and pacing of this show, and forget about whether I like the fact that it's following the lore or not, which I don't, but even if you ignore that, just as an objective TV series, I think the balance and the pacing has been off overall. There are certain episodes where okay, certain episodes which are not okay. It just feels like the whole thing it's like teetering on a seesaw all the time, and they don't have that balance.
Yeah. You're right, my friend. You are right. So, okay, we've got 2 more episodes in this season 1, right?
That's right. So we've got episode 8 coming out on Thursday, this coming Thursday, and then episode 9 coming out on the 19th, and I believe that is the series finale. So or at least, season finale.
Yeah. So let's make our predictions. Where do you think after episode 9 we're going to stand? What's going to be the state of play at the end of episode 9?
So
let's hear a bold prediction. Yeah.
That's the thing is I'm so not sure of where they're going because of this pacing thing.
So
you tell me first.
All right. I feel like Master Chief and McKee are going to escape together. Whether it's whether one of them kind of kidnaps the other or whether they make a connection, I feel like those 2 are going to go off together as a team, and you're going to kind of have this triangle, whether it's going to be UNSC, right, and then kind of McKee and Master Chief. You know, everyone's going to be going for, you know, Halo or searching for the artifacts or something. I think this is where it's going to be. And they're obviously all going to somehow end up at Madrigal, right? It's going to end up, you know, this portal that Kwan Ha and her ancestors and this group of, you know, ladies that she met in the desert, you know, that wear all white, are going to be. And obviously somehow Soren is going to come back. And he'll probably be joining forces, obviously, with Kwan Ha, which puts Soren somehow and Master Chief, you know, at odds. I feel like that's kind of where we're going to end up at the end of season 1.
Yeah, I think I'm on the same page as you, but maybe slightly different tack. I think what's going to happen is... So, one thing I'm not 100% clear on, I have a feeling that when they got teleported to Halo, it was in their minds, not that they physically got teleported there at the end of episode 6. We don't know that for sure, but I don't think they're actually physically there. I think they're just their mind has been projected there. Okay?
Yeah.
So I think that the teleporter or / portal that Quan Ha is protecting links to that halo somehow. Okay? Either to that halo, or there's another, in video game lore, there's another place called the Ark, which controls all of the halos.
Okay.
So somehow I think that portal is going to lead either to one or all of the halos. Let's put it that way. Okay? I think that over the next 2 episodes, somehow the UNSC is going to figure that out, which means that somehow McKee is going to figure that out, which means that somehow the Covenant are going to figure that out, which results in probably in episode 9 an all-out battle on Madrigal, so that both of those factions, the Covenant and the UNSC, can get control over that portal. And I don't know if there is a season 2. If there's a season 2 and they want to do a cliffhanger, it will likely end with Master Chief and McKee going through the portal at the same time.
Yeah.
And kind of ending up on Halo physically. Or if they're not sure about what's going to happen, I somehow even just see Master Chief making it through and then destroying the portal so that he gets stranded out on Halo with Cortana and nobody else. So that, because that's the only way to prevent Halo from being activated, and he doesn't know. And right now, even Master Chief is, he's not sure whether the UNSC are the good guys or not. And he's put in that position because of what happened with Halsey.
One of the things that we've seen in so many series that always keeps things fresh is, an unforeseen teaming. People who were previously, enemies, suddenly start to cooperate together. What would you think if there would be basically 2 defections, and either it's Miranda or Halsey that go and work for the Covenant? And I say that because, one, Halsey, who says she cares about humans, to be honest, I feel like she only cares about being right.
The science, yeah.
And the science. And Miranda seems to be really interested in, the alien Covenant language. So I could see kind of either one of those jumping ship and saying, hey, I'm going to go cooperate with the other side. Screw you all. And both of those, mother and daughter, both have a kind of a reason to be upset with, the current hierarchy. McKee, again, we're not really sure of her motivations. Maybe she comes over to the humans and she says, hey, I want to work with Spartans. I want to work with, Master Chief. So I could also see that maybe there's some jumping of loyalties, and that would keep things fresh if there's going to be a season 2.
I'll tell you right now, if Halsey ends up defecting, or even if Miranda ends up defecting, the Halo gaming universe is going to implode.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
I love it.
I imagine that people are going to lose their minds over it.
Really?
They're already so unhappy with this TV show. For them to really blatantly take a dump on the lore of the video games like they already have, I think people would lose their minds. And I don't think that, even though the writers have shown no real respect for the lore, I don't think that they would go that far. Yeah, because Halsey everything Halsey does, she does for the sake of humanity, even though in this show, it definitely, you're right, it more seems like she's in it for herself, right? She uses the excuse that that humans need to win at all costs as a justification, but I agree with you. I think her motivation is a little deeper than that, or maybe even a little shallower than that, which is to say, I'm really more interested in proving my detractors wrong. That, I want the admirals to come back to me and say, you were right after all.
Yeah. To be seen. I have to say, I'm looking forward to the last 2 episodes. If anything, just because I really want to see a clean ending to the season. And I agree. I think we're obviously setting up for a massive battle at the end. And this battle, I'm hoping, has some good payoff. I've been
me too. Me too.
Yeah.
I have to admit, while I'm okay with the show after these 2 episodes seem kind of side by side, back to back, I have to say I'm getting a little bit tired of this sleeper agent thing because McKee really isn't either here or there. Like you said, they haven't really used her in any way. Mm-hmm. She seems too neutral for that, so I'm getting tired of that. I'm glad that Quan has found some kind of peace because I was getting really tired of this I'm always angry and rageful. Yeah. Like, I think that's such a shallow and boring way to look at any character.
Yeah. So, yeah, I was going to say, you made a very good point about McKee being maybe like underutilized.
Yes.
Because it seems like the greatest, let's call them villains, although she's not really a villain yet though. But they have this ability to kind of like manipulate their way out of things and to make you not certain of what their real motivations are. And they've just made her meek. They haven't made her particularly evil or manipulative or anything. And I feel like that's really the disservice to that character, where she could be so like, oh, I'm so sad. I've been held hostage. I'm just craving, comfort food, or, oh, I miss this. And I'm so traumatized. And she hasn't done any of that. She hasn't been at all like demonstrated. Maybe this is what we're both saying. She hasn't demonstrated like any real personality when that character and the situation she's in is just like so ripe, so inviting for an actress to come in and like really add some gravitas to that position, right? And instead they've just kind of made her sitting in like a little hoodie in the corner, like quiet, accepting her lunch, getting her blood pressure taken. Like, she could have been so manipulative in that role. She could have been so sweet and endearing. There could have been so many different ways to play it. I feel like that's really a lost opportunity. And I think as an actress, I hope she's like regretful of that as well, because like that could have been like her, her role. It could have given her like so much opportunity to kind of infuse her own personality into that situation. But instead there's been like no dialogue, nothing.
I agree. It's
boo.
Yeah, it's exactly. Oh, and finally, this Cortana subplot or whatever it is, I'm getting really frustrated with that as someone in the game, someone who liked the games and really appreciated that relationship between Cortana and John. They're very standoffish at the moment. Yeah. They're not working together as partners. Yeah. She seems to be more allied with Halsey than she does with John. Yeah. Which is not how it was in the games at all. Like, Cortana literally was ready to die for John and vice versa. And that is not where we are. And I get that they've changed things around and that there's like growing things, but I don't like that. I really don't like this.
I agree. I mean, I think that they've had this tension for too long, and I keep waiting for it to change, where she makes this great gesture, he makes this great gesture, and somehow they become, totally allied. But I agree. It's been really uncomfortable for too long, and it doesn't seem to be going anywhere. Although I expect at the end, Master Chief will see her value, and then they'll become, the best.
It'll probably happen on the battlefield, where all of a sudden he's able to take on like 15 different Covenant elites at the same time because she's got a 360 view around him, and without looking, he's able to do the kinds of stuff that we see him do in the video games. Maybe, but I'm just like, for someone who was introduced 4 episodes ago or 3 episodes ago.
It's not that they're not so tight yet. It's the passive aggressiveness,
Yeah,
it seems like it's like a bad relationship, and that's not what it should be like. I can understand that he's like resistant, and that's okay. But this passive aggressiveness, I feel like is just like not healthy for me watching the show either.
Yeah. I mean, getting to the point where they threatened to kill Halsey in that decontamination scene, just so that he can learn what kind of abilities she has to stop this. It just seemed unnecessary, in my opinion. I just don't think they needed to go this direction. But
so, do you think someone else needs to get introduced? There has to be a new character that's introduced towards the end of this, right?
Who's left?
It? I mean, is there someone else has to be introduced? I mean,
so
this is the cast
games, from the video games, the only one I could think of that could potentially be introduced is the Arbiter, but it's too early for that. In terms of the lore, he's a Covenant bad guy that becomes a good guy that ends up working with Master Chief as a partner. But that's I don't know when the lore is, and they've clearly changed a lot of lore in this game, but that happens way later.
I mean, I just feel like there's not a lot of people here. I mean, there's no, unless someone is going to okay, fine. We had Kai, take a rebellious streak. I think that's over. Vanek has been very robotic. Riz, we never see, Admiral does not seem like she's stepping up to take a larger role. Captain doesn't seem like he's stepping up to take a larger role. Vinsher may or may not be dead. Adun is always going to be, unless Adun is going to take a turn as a heel, maybe he goes to work for the Covenant. There's no one left. Who else is there in the cast? It just seems like it's so thin right now.
I kind of am okay with that because, it's just another character. If they introduced another character, it's just somebody else that they would use to muddy up the waters. And the waters are plenty muddy already. Yeah, so I think for me, my preference is they work on trying to calm the waters and really right the ship. And maybe they do that. I will admit that these two episodes taken together, individually, I wasn't impressed. But when you look at them together and think about them as potentially one episode instead of two, it starts to see, okay, it's not bad. Yeah. It's still not great, but it's not bad.
Yeah, I think the problem is the editing. I think if they would have taken those two episodes and just spliced them together and made it still two episodes, but half the storyline in each one, I think it would have played better.
I think so too. I think it would have been one of the more standout episodes, even though there wasn't much action in there. Yeah, that's my feel on it. I'm still at right now a skip. I will say that depending on how episodes 8 and 9, I may go up to a mooch, but I certainly don't see myself going to subscribe to Paramount Plus for this show.
Oh no, I'm definitely not a subscribe, but I think it's a mooch, and I think it's also a little bit important to watch this simply because of the cultural relevance of Halo as a video game. And I think there's, in our debate club, one of the things that you and I have been throwing around is whether or not we should have a debate on, how many, culturally significant video games went on to have equally important movies or shows, and kind of vice versa. And I think that Halo has been such an important video game that to miss the show, I think would be disappointing. But at the same time, the show is so far not at all holding up its side of the bargain.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Well, we'll say more in 2 weeks, I guess.
Indeed. So that's where we are. We're both at either a skip or a mooch someone's password. We will give you our final verdict on the series in 2 weeks' time when the series finale ends or season finale drops. And then we can decide whether season 2 is even worth something exploring or not.
Final grades. Final exam. Pete, thank you for your time. We will see you on our next episode. We've got to talk about season finale of Winning Time. We've also got to evaluate the final of season 4 of Ozark.
Yep.
And your favorite, Nick Cage's movie review.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. I can't wait.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you, Pete.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone.
See you on the flip side. Bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.